Okay, folks, we'll get started. This evening's in two parts, so I'm going to talk just very briefly, mostly with some reminders about things that you need to do, forms that need to be filled out and all that exciting stuff, plus a little bit of an update of some new information. Mike Giles, unfortunately, is over east, but he's been up to Exmouth and spoke to all the people up in Exmouth, and there's a really good groundswell of opinion towards this event running again this year, so really positive feedback from Exmouth. Just a quick word from our sponsors and we'll move on. As I said, so I'm going to speak firstly on the reminders and the updates. What I'd really like is get some questions afterwards, get some dialogue happening. Then the main speaker is Paul Gramming, and he's going to speak about his experience cruising around the Exmouth area, and he's visited a lot of anchorages which are not in the cruising guide. So if you're thinking of going for a cruise after the event, then this will be really valuable information. In terms of the update, look, I think I've said this every time I've spoken. Really important that you make sure that you know how you're going to meet the stability requirements for the event, because it takes a little bit of time to do, and sometimes a bit of research to be done. And to be honest, you don't want to start preparing for the event and then discovering at the last minute there's an issue with stability, because now 98% of boats out in the marina here would meet the stability in a heartbeat, so it shouldn't be a big issue, but if there is a problem with stability, unfortunately it's not the sort of thing you're going to fix, so best to find out early. There are basically three ways of doing it. The most simple is most boats these days have got an ISO design category A, and there'll be a plate on the boat to show that. If you're a race boat, you may have an ORCI certificate, and you get it from there. And then, most importantly, is this SSS number. So we have an agreement with RORC in the UK, and they will do some calculations based off fairly simple data from the boat about its length and its beam and its displacement, and they will come up with this SSS number, which is a safety and stability screening number, seaworthiness screening number. Look, last time we did 8 boats, went through that, and 7 of the boats passed without any trouble at all. The only boat which had an issue was an old FAR 40 down at Mandurah, and back in the day, the rating rule encouraged you to take the weight out of the keel and put the weight in the bottom of the bilge, because that reduced the stability of the boat and you got a more favourable handicap. So, and to be honest, when the boat, called Bird on the Wire, I might add, when that boat failed, we sort of, to be honest, we had a sigh of relief because we know the boat, and it probably is not the boat to go take to Exmouth, but particularly for heavier cruising boats, all of those passed not by a margin, they passed by a country mile. Don't worry about the photograph, we don't need to do a physical test of stability. This is the French way of doing it. They don't muck around with computer formulas and analysis. They just tip the boat over and see what the pull is on the mast to put the boat back upright. So, but we don't need to do physical proof for this event.
Bill?
Yes?
Will we go through the same office for the SSS calculation?
No, it's the same office. So we've got a spreadsheet, like a data form, so that's the information. So Chris will have that form, fill out the information, and I don't know whether we're going to put them up through as a batch or do them one at a time, but for £45, there's not many bargains in sailing, and this is one of the bargains that are around. They're doing it for £45 per boat. So as I said, and they're pretty good actually, because last time I think we put through the boats in a batch, and they came back with all these questions to say, well, this boat's a such and such. We think it's actually got 2 masts, not 1 mast. Can you please check? Oh shit, oh yeah, it does have 2 masts. So they actually do a check of the validity of the data based off information they've got. But as I said, they were very quick, very efficient, and very cheap. Next thing is inspections. So there is a requirement now for a keel and rudder inspection. And this, I don't know if you followed any of the background on this, but World Sailing have been investigating keels coming off boats, and they have documented, I think they're up to about 120 cases of boats where the keels come off. Sometimes brand new boats, sometimes older boats. And anyway, they've introduced a new requirement, which is that I think it's, I'm missing my expert. I think it's, anyway, it's a requirement to do an inspection, and then I think it has to be done, I think it's every 10 years, or after, it's 2 years, or after any grounding. So, it's 2 years, yep. But anyway, so it is a requirement. My advice, it means the boat's got to come out of the water, and my advice is to book that in early, because if they, whenever you take the boat out of the water, you may find things that need doing. If you leave it to the last minute, you're not going to have time to do that, to get any work that may come up. And the same thing with rig inspections. That really comes, that's not a requirement for the rate, for the event, but it may be a requirement for your insurance company. So again, check with your insurance. If you need to get a rig inspection, I would book it in early, because there's not many riggers around in WA, and they've probably already got a lot of work booked in, so do both those early. And the other thing I mentioned is your 150-mile qualifying passage. That can be, you just go out and sail wherever you want to sail for 150 miles and come back and take a screenshot as a record that you've actually sailed that distance. Alternatively, if you're a cruising boat, you can join. There's 2 organised races which you're welcome to join, and that would provide you with the yellow brick tracker, which will monitor your position throughout the passage, and will provide you with radio skates. There'll be somebody, effectively a shorty, keeping an eye on the boats out there. So you may prefer to do that rather than just go out and sail by yourself. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's as long as it's 150 miles, it's your choice as to which to do.
So is it continuous?
Yes, continuous, Betty, yes.
You couldn't use the Pilbara cruise?
Well, you'd have to take it slow. 24 hours, I think, is also acceptable as 150 miles. You can go very slowly, but...
I think I'm just thinking, because, Michael was going over, that's not in company cruise.
Yeah, the requirement is it's got to be really a day-night, because it's after you've been sailing overnight, that's when the batteries run flat, and when you discover that, you've run out of water, and, so that's the purpose behind it. It's got to have that endurance part of it, so it's not just 150 miles done over a couple of days. It's got to be a continuous 150 miles or 24 hours. And as I said, 50% of the crew that you're going to take to Exmouth need to be on the boat. I suspect if you did 2 different things and you had some crew on some and some on the next one, then I'm sure that would be acceptable. But 50% of the crew have got to have been part of the qualifying passage.
Sorry. Question on stability. Is it sufficient just to check that the boat has a plate saying it's category A, or do you have to actually get it signed off by a scrutineer?
Now, if you've got a plate on the boat which says category A, and virtually most boats built after 2000 or so, particularly boats out of Europe, the US were a little bit slower to come on, but they've come on board. So just a photograph of the plate, that's all that's required. Sorry. The other one, which again is a bit of a lead item, is training. So there's a requirement for 50% to have done a sea survival course. We're running them here at the club. I think Chris is at the back there. I think we've got one in February, I think, Chris, is that right? Yeah, one in February. So we will plan the courses according to the demand. So if you need to do it, please book it in because it helps us in our planning. There's other things which are first aid and radio, but to be honest, there's a lot of first aid course providers and there's radio certificates I think you can mostly do online these days. So it's the sea survival one which is the most important one in terms of lead time. And the last thing, and this came from the visit, from Department of Transport, they know we're all coming, they've already got a list of all the boats that are registered, but they'd like their forms to be completed. And they want credit card details. So there's two things, forms and money, you know, that's DOT. So please, again, if you haven't already got it, Chris would have it, please complete a booking form. If you don't have all the information, like you don't know who your insurer is going to be that time, or you know, still just fill the form out. They accepted my form, and I don't have a gas certificate, an electrical certificate, or a DOT registration, and they were happy to get the form. So please just fill out the forms; it makes them happy. And if you're planning to stay. So they basically have block booked out the whole marina for us, basically from the time boats arrive through until the Monday after the presentation. And so they're moving, a lot of the commercial boats are being moved around to Tantabiddi on the other side to clear space for us, so we get priority booking in that period. But if you want to put your boat in after the Monday, which 15th, I think it's the 15th. Anyway, if you want to be in the marina after the 15th, you need to make a separate booking for that, because the first booking is going to be under the sort of Fremantle umbrella, but the second booking is that's your own matter, and there's no guarantee of getting priority because some of the commercial boats will want to come back in. So if you could do the bookings, please. Just in terms of the update, I don't see him here, Ian Whitehead Ian's done all the hard work in terms of issuing an updated notice of race and notice of rally. It is beautifully marked up, so you can see the deletions and the additions. Some of it's just tidy up, but there is some clarification. There's quite a few inquiries about people wanting to go three-handed, and how exactly does that work? So that's been filled out. I'm not going to run through it all. All I would say is please go away and read the notice. There's hours and hours of work gone in to make this, to lay everything out. So please just go ahead and read it. The other one is the container. So we're well advanced. There's going to be a 40-foot container. It will be down here at the club about a week before we go. You can put anything you want in there with your outboards or your barbecues or your anything which you don't think you're going to need on the trip. You can send it up there, and it will then be parked next to the marina up in Exmouth. And then the container comes back again. So I said, if you're a race boat, you send your sails back. If you've got cantankerous crew, stick them in the container, get rid of them. But we've got so last time some people even put bicycles into the container, so they've got a bike to cycle around while they're up in Exmouth. And the more we fill it up, the more people who use it, the cheaper the cost will be. I think last time around it's like a couple $100, and that was for outboards and anchors and God knows what. So it's a useful facility.
When's it returning to Fremantle?
It will normally leave a couple of days after the presentation evening, so it'll probably be back in Fremantle about a week after we finished up there. So it's basically by the time a lot of boats will tend to leave. Some boats will come straight back, and people leave out for the rally. Once they've done that, then the container will be packed up and sent back to the car park here. Now, last update. Exmouth School, they're really keen. They want to be part of the event. They want to follow us on the trackers. They're taking information beforehand. There is a plan to have some people to speak at, I think it's going to be on the Friday morning at their school assembly. Sorry, it's Thursday morning at the school assembly. So there's going to be a call for volunteers to go and speak at the Exmouth school. The presentation dinner, that looks pretty well in hand actually. We hope to be using the sailing club, but we also have an alternative venue at the council offices, just in case it's either bad weather or the sailing club's demanding too much money as they did last time. So we've got a plan. We've got a plan B. Keep them honest. And look, the last and most important announcement is that Bowman Brewing are very keen to support the event, and they've signed up to provide us with beer on arrival.
Yeah,
So, I'm sorry?
yeah.
Exactly. And so they're even considering becoming a full sponsor of the event, and they want to sponsor us with product in kind. So it suits them, they get a tax write-off. It suits us, we get free beer. So it's going to be it's something to look forward to when we get to Exmouth.
Why don't you make them a sponsor of the cruising event after?
Well, they are apparently considering. They are very keen on the event. They're very keen to have us. You know, we did some good business for them on the Thursday night. We're booked in for them again. So, but they just like the event, I guess, with the whalebone, nautical theme. And they know we like a beer, so they may come on as a major sponsor. They may become naming rights sponsor if things go well. But at the moment, we've got beer on arrival. So. Very happy to take any questions, and otherwise I'll pass over to Paul as the main speaker.
I said BOA, so is that bubbles on arrival as well?
Unfortunately, Sharon, the grapes are not growing too well in Exmouth at the moment, so but there's plenty of beer, that's for sure.
I vaguely remember they had bottles there.
And apparently the sailing club is. We drank 36 bottles of rum at the sailing club. We drank them out of rum, and God knows how much red wine we drank. We drank out of red wine. They're still talking about it, so they're going to be better prepared this time.
Yeah, that's a good night.
Okay. Sorry, Paul, you know to press the buttons to do all that.
Okay, thanks very much, Bill. My name's Paul Browning. I must say I feel a bit of an imposter here, somebody from Kalgoorlie coming here to lecture Freo sailors about sailing at Exmouth. But anyway, we had a fabulous time there last year. We left the boat up for 3 months, and I'm sorry I'm going to use a very dirty 4-letter word here. We had to come back and work. That's the 4-letter word. So the boat stayed there until the middle of August. We went up for a couple of weeks in June and July, and that's when we cruised. So that is a picture of my beautiful wife in front of a beautiful sunset that is set off with her pink, beautiful shirt in front of the beautiful beach at Saruria Island. And I could cut this presentation very short by simply saying, go to Saruria Island and spend a week there. But I don't think that's quite what you're paying me for, not that you're paying me much. But so I thought I would talk about what we did last year, what you can expect by way of weather, what the anchorages are like, and what you might do next time. So, where we went last year, now you'll see pink, red anchors and green anchors. The red anchors are those which are referred to in the cruising guide, the West Australian Cruising Guide, and the green anchors are the places we actually stayed, most of which are referred to in the West Australian Cruising Guide. So I'll talk about those in a bit more detail in a minute. So, and I might add, the whole area generally is referred to as the Mackerel Islands, as a bit of a marketing thing by the Exmouth and Onslow tourism fraternities, although there is no such place as Mackerel Island or the Mackerel Islands if you're looking for it on the chart. So the first place we went to was Serruria Island. I'll talk about that quite a bit more through the presentation. We then went to the Montebellos and anchored at on the west side of Barrow Island on the way up, and then spent about a week or 10 days in the Montebellos. The Montebellos are 120 miles from the Exmouth Marina. It's not in my brief to speak about them today because it is a bit more than a 6 or 7 day sail. So I will concentrate more on where else we went to. So when we came back in June, we went across to Serruria again and then to Onslow. So that's Onslow down there. And then up to North Island, which is part of the Mangrove Group. And that was not a bad spot. I'll talk about it in a bit more detail on the way through. Then to Thevenard, and a bit more about that. And then when we went back in July, we were across the western side of the Gulf, and that was a good spot, particularly if there are fairly solid easterlies, or and into the northerly quadrant for that part of it. We didn't go further into the Gulf, but I understand Barry and Betty did this year. On Twitch, Barry and Betty Walsh are in the room. They also went to those couple of islands on the east side of the Gulf as well. So, what does all that mean? Let's have a look at the weather initially, and what you're going to get is a lot of that. East southeasters at 12 to 18 knots, sometimes a bit stronger, but we didn't really encounter those easterlies much stronger than 20 knots generally. But they do chuck up a pretty nasty short chop, and I kept thinking, I'm glad I'm not going into these. But it's a steep sea when it cracks in a bit, and it doesn't have to be blowing very hard to get that steep sea. And I've never quite sailed in seas like it, and I guess it's because of the relative shallowness of the waters there. It's seldom more than about 15 or 20. Well, we've got depths, haven't we? I think that line there is 30 metres. Yeah. So everything inside is less than 100 feet, and quite a bit of it's only 20 metres. You also get some south-southeasters, which can pipe in a bit, but the biggest problem with the south-southeaster is at night, or in the early evening through till about midnight, they go into the southwest. And that can render your beautiful west-facing anchorage, which gives you great shelter from the southeaster, quite exposed. So you need to sort of bear in mind the fact that you're thinking, oh, well, this will be good, we've got a southeaster, or a south-southeaster. So the southeaster tends to stay in the southeast, tends not to go into the west, but certainly the south-southeaster goes into the south-southwest, and we had some unpleasant nights in anchorages where that happened. And then when there's a front on the way, you'll get a northeaster, which, like it does here, typically goes rapidly into the west, and then backs its way around through the south, and within 24 hours it's back in the east again. So that gives you a bit of a picture of the weather. The temperatures were reasonably warm, but don't think you're going to get away in shirt sleeves all the time. You'll need to pull over from time to time. So a little bit on weather resources. Both of those links. The first one gives you the Pilbara coastal waters forecast. The second one, there are handouts with these links, and I understand these slides will be on the club website in due course. The second one, of course, is the 4-day colour chart that I'm sure we all look at. The other resource that I used extensively was if you click just above the 4-day colour chart, you get the previous week synoptic charts, and there are automatic weather stations all over the place. So the previous week's charts are every 6 hours at 0800, 1400, 2000 and 0200. So you can look at what the weather was at, for example, Thevenard Island or Onslow or Norwest Cape, and know, oh, well, that's what the weather pattern was there, that's what the synoptic chart said there, and the printout from the automatic weather station said, right, that's 22 knots from the east, so there's the chart looks like that, there's the wind looks like that. Fast forward six hours, that's what the readings are, and I just found it a really useful tool to figure out what the, how to interpret the charts. We're all reasonably familiar with what the chart means in our local area, I suspect, but rather than simply relying on weather forecasts, which are invariably done from somewhere a long way away, possibly not even by a human. So, and I think, being part of being having a reasonable competence at weather forecasting is sort of just about as important as keeping your crew on board and your boat afloat. And that, that for me was a very helpful thing, very helpful tool that I used. So yeah, that's it means you can compare the two and sort of interpret the chart a lot better. Seabreeze had great forecasts all the way through. I can't say, they forecast for everywhere up there. There's, I don't know, 9 or 13 or something forecast points that are only a few miles apart, some of them. For example, Point Murat and Norwest Cape and Exmouth, you can throw a blanket over the whole three. The link gets you to the Seruria Island forecast for them. But one thing the locals said was that the forecasts always underestimated the winds, irrespective of who forecast them. So it didn't matter whether it was sea breeze, predict wind, bomb, windy. There was always more wind than was forecast, and we certainly experienced that. Okay, so let's have a bit of a yarn about anchorages, and we're looking at the Muron Islands, which are about 5 or 6 miles north of Murat Point. Murat Point is the eastern point of the northeastern point of the Norwest Cape Peninsula. Norwest Cape, of course, being the northwest point of that. So not all that far from Exmouth, about 20 miles. You'll notice there's no red anchors or green anchors, and we'll talk about that in a second. The other spot you're looking at there is Seruria Island with 3 or 4 anchor symbols on it. Okay, so there's Seruria Island there. Righto, WA Cruising Guide, and Kim is in the room. I can see him over there. Last time I spoke at this gathering, I said that I thought Kim and his predecessors, Jim Putt, Steve Laws and Ross Brown, all deserved a knighthood and $100,000 a year pension, but nobody, I think, has come forward. So I would hope, in view of the magnificent work these gentlemen have done for us in the cruising fraternity, they at least don't have to buy their own beer in this place. So please value the work that these excellent people have done and this fabulous resource, which is really just an absolutely world-class resource as far as I can see. So the Muron Islands you can see there is a great day anchorage. There's fabulous diving and snorkeling and marine life, and it's a great place if it's a calm day and you can go there for an hour or two on your way to Serruria Island. 3, 4, 5 hour sail to get there, a couple of hours there, 3 or 4 hours there maybe, and then it's 18 miles across to Serruria. So we didn't go there, and it was a mistake. We should have gone there. It was a great spot. But Mike Giles spent a very unpleasant evening there. It was not a good anchorage, but it was great to be there during the day, particularly if it's been calm.
The anchorage that Mike was on was actually a public mooring.
Mooring,
There are
yeah.
some public moorings. We were
Yeah.
there and we left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the moorings on the east side, with the easterly, you're on lee shore, you want to hope it's good mooring. Okay, so back to, let's have a talk about Serruria Island. The WA Cruising Guide has quite a bit about it. You'll find it in the Cruising Guide, page 364. That is where it is, but it's a really good central hub for cruising in the general regions. 35 or 36 miles from Exmouth, about 25 across to Onslow, how far to 20 miles to Thevenard, and 25 from the North Island and most of the mangrove islands across the other side. We'll talk about them shortly. Good anchorages on the west, southeast and northeast side of the island. So it's sheltered from pretty much everywhere, but you are likely to have to shift if, to get shelter if the wind shifts quite a bit. It's a fabulous place. There's lovely white sandy beaches up both sides of the island. The island's quite long. It'd be several miles, 3 or 4 miles north-south, and island white sandy beaches pretty much all the way around. Some nice snorkelling through there, and you could certainly do far worse than just to spend 3 or 4 days there if you wanted to. While I'm talking about sources of navigational information, I recently discovered this, and I couldn't believe I'd never seen it before, is the sailing instructions en route put out by the Yanks, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which I've likewise never heard of, and it gives you all the information that the Australian pilot does for free. You download it. There is the Webber's address, and there are versions seemingly of it absolutely everywhere in the world. And I've never spoken to anybody else that knew about it. Dave Kenny probably does as a master mariner, but a really good source of information. So publication 175 is the one you want, is the northwest and south coasts of Australia. The east coast of New Zealand, I think, are combined in publication 116 or 117 or something like that. But anyway, you can find them, one from another on that web link. Okay, there's Serruria. Now you can see the 3 red anchors. The green anchor was the last spot we stayed when the wind did crack in from the south-southwest, and that got us, we weren't on the reef like it indicates there, but that actually got us quite good shelter. If there is a reasonably high tide, and you are going to be there with high tides, the future slide there is a tide chart, that means that instead of that thing that reef being dry, it's got 2.5 metres of water over it, so you don't get much shelter from the chop, from that. A lot of the reef, does give you really good shelter, but not if there is a high tide and you're there sort of through the new moon is later in the week that you'll be there. So there are reasonably high tidal ranges. Okay, so that was the green anchor there, in case you can't see it, was where we got in really close. We're still in 5 or 6 metres, 4 or 5 metres of water in there, you know, with plenty of swinging room close to the reef. But it was, and you know, you needed to be in there. You could probably fit 6 or 8 boats in there, that far, that close in. So yeah, it worked well. Okay, so there's a few friendly, familiar faces, I'm sure, enjoying the magnificence of Saroo. We had a fabulous beach party there with 6 or 8 boats there, I think. Yeah, it's a great spot. Okay, so 25.5 miles odd across to Onslow. Onslow's a great anchorage in southerly quadrant winds. On the way across, just here is the mouth of the Ashburton River, and just here is the Ashburton Port, which looks just there, yep, which looks like that from the north. It's not on that chart, and that's the Wheatstone natural gas port. Everywhere you look around the place, one of the things you'll get used to is a very industrial landscape with oil rigs everywhere. You know, that's an oil rig, that's an oil rig, there's a couple there, you know, massive great things all over the place. And, you know, in the end we sort of rather got, we thought they looked quite good, you know, despite the fact we were appalled by them when we first saw them. So, yeah, they're all over the place. So, Onslow, we anchored there in the bay. You could have anchored anywhere in that bay. It's a terrific little spot. Put your dinghy on the north west part of the beach. We put ours down, where's my red? There it is. We put ours more like there and got there just in time to prevent some of the younger members of the Onslow community from relieving us of the fuel from the outboard and the anchor and a few other things. So up where the Yarrow is, there's a lot more people around this launching ramp right there, and it's a lot safer. Everybody said to us, "Hey, what's your boat down there? Bring it up here." You can see an envelope there. That's the post office. That's the pub across the road. Yeah, there's a supermarket. There's servos. There's all sorts of facilities in town. I don't know how many people live in Onslow, several thousand, I would think. And it was a nice little place. Don't think you're going to get down a Beeden Creek. It is dredged to, it is allegedly dredged to 1.6 metres, but the fishermen talked about running aground in their fishing boats. It goes down here somewhere, and it's dredged to 2 metres alongside a wharf, so even that's not all that deep for a cruising boat. So you need a high tide to get in there, a really good reason. You know, the bay was beautifully protected, and anywhere from sort of a bit north of west right round to you know, solid easterlies. It was a great spot.
Excuse me, Paul. Can I just jump in on that previous slide? Maybe one thing to consider. That Beeden Creek is a cyclone anchorage, so if you ever had to put your boat in there, get up there in a high tide and go right up into mangroves, it's probably one of the top spots to lash up.
So yeah, okay, so you need the high tide to get there. The other thing is that there, avoid that, that's the salt, the Onslow salt loading facility. I think that's a mile and a half or something, that jetty. And there are often ships anchored in the vicinity here, waiting to use that facility. Okay, there's the pub, and the girls having a beer, and some interesting street art. And we had a lovely sunset there with the twinkling lights of the thriving metropolis. So yeah, that was Onslow. Okay, it was about 17 or 18 miles from there up to North Island, just here, which is referred to in the cruising guide. And that was a nice spot. We happened to have very low tides when we were there in the middle of the day. So it was a bit hard to get ashore. So we didn't go ashore, but we were assured that it was a great spot. There were orange-red, Pindan, Pilbara, sandy beaches, and very long. We understand there are turtles nesting there. There are also turtles nesting at Saruria Island, and in fact, someone that was up there, was it you guys, Betty? Did you see turtles nesting? Oh, turtles hatching?
No, that was Ken, and he actually saw them at the Lucas Beach. No,
What was he
no.
doing there? Anyway, so that wasn't a bad spot. Now, I've put the ZOC chart here as well, because just this 3 o'clock is just here somewhere. It says inadequately surveyed. See ZOC diagram. ZOC stands for Zone of Confidence, and that area happened to be a Zone C, which, as you can see, says the position accuracy is plus or minus 500 metres. The depth accuracy is 2 metres plus 5%. Depth anomalies may be expected. So in other words, eyes, where you're going, we got through it fairly well, we clearly got through it. We survived. But big areas of the coast are well charted. You sort of wonder why not. 240 odd years after European settlement, and considering the amount of money that comes out of the ground and gets exported up there, you would have thought that it might be a bit higher the priorities. But anyway, that's just carefully your zone of confidence on the charts. But, have a look at what they're saying. So that's where the anchorage. That's where we anchored in Norfolk. So I don't know where my green anchor has gone there, but the cruising guide puts us down there, and that was pretty good. Now here's the tide chart for the Tuesday to the Sunday that you'll be there, and as you can see, there are some pretty big ranges. 2.68 to 0.81, nearly 2 metre range. 2.68. These dry out at the low tide, at the date of zero datum. So they're going to have 2.5 metres of water over, not giving you that much shelter if there is a chop from the southeast, from the south or the southwest. You'd probably be okay there from the south because of Middle Mangrove Island, but anything coming from here with a high tide is likely to not give you much protection from the chop, I wouldn't have thought. We happened to be there with low tides, and it was fabulous. Okay, you can then go off up to Large Island, which is referred to in the cruising guide that says there's shelter out of the tidal stream to the southwest. You don't have to go that way, of course. There's another very narrow channel through there, and you might be able to get through here. But you can certainly get around the top into there, and that's whatever it is. I can't remember what the distance is, but it was 18.3 miles. There you go. Find your way through there. But that's quite pretty country as well. We didn't go there. Other people we spoke to did, and they said it was a very viable anchorage. So that's that. Okay, so that sort of takes us out of the northeast part of the area. Before I leave, Port World, sheltered from pretty much everywhere down there against the coast, the Pilbara coast. Down there, we didn't go there either. But other people spoke highly of it. Right, so Thevenard, Robbie talked, wanted to arrange something at Thevenard. There is a resort with a bar and restaurant there. The big problem with it, that's the mooring, that's the anchoring field, which puts it smack on a lee shore for the prevailing winds. And we were there at about 12 knots of breeze, and absolutely could not get into the dinghy. There was this chop that seemed to be, 5 or 6 feet, and I thought, I'm going to get hurt getting into the dinghy here, so we didn't. So we went and anchored around the top side of it, there, and that was gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, a lovely sheltered spot, fabulous snorkelling and, very close to the reef, lovely anchorage. But we had low tide, at the time we thought we just wandered down the beach to the pub. Couldn't find our way ashore. It was just kept running aground in the rubber dinghy. So I think you will have a better time because your high tides are in the middle of the day. So that's probably a more viable option for you there. Okay, on to the east side of the Gulf. So we've got Y Island there, and that is 15 miles due east of the marina. So straight across the Gulf, due east, and we wouldn't have gone there. We were we got sheltered there from a nor'wester. We had actually been down here at Tent Island, and the nor'wester came in one morning. So we simply motored straight upwind to that spot and got great shelter from the nor'west. There were a million birds there, so it was, take your binocular, it was a really good ornithological spot. And there was a rat there that was interesting. Tent Island, 5 miles to the southeast, just there you can see. So nice sandy beaches, fairly easy to get ashore. There was an interesting grassed plateau, soft grasses that you could walk across. Again, lots of bird life, birds nesting in burrows and things like that. The north and east side of it, this red dot is, I'm going to get it going, just there, it says unsurveyed. The red dots around the north part of the island is where I went with the dinghy and a hand-led line, trying to find a way through there in case the wind kicked into the south. I didn't find one. There was, you needed, the reef seems to go a lot further, well not that far, but out around there to get in there, and I'm sort of running out of time and petrol in the outboard and all that sort of thing. So we never did find it. But there were, 2 anchorages that worked fine for us, but it would be much better. Great shelter from the, I think there's no from anything from the sort of a little bit east of north through to a little bit south and east. Good spot there. Let me just go back to that. And I think it would be worth the club talking to Kalis, because you cannot tell me that they don't know what's in there. They would have trawled prawns all through there. They would know where any boggy is or anything like that. So I'm sure we can get reasonable charts from this. Steve, I understand you have a satellite picture that shows depths as well, so that's another resource.
Yeah, the DOT cartography have been really helpful in trying to help us, so we plan to ask them some more questions.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay, so where might you go next year, bearing in mind that that's what your tides are going to be like? So, certainly Serruria Island. Unless it's a southerly or a south-south easter, when it kicks in from the south-southwest for a few hours in the late evening, that's a great spot. It's a beautiful place, and it's pretty good anchorage, certainly from the easterlies and from the westerlies. So yeah, you put that on your list. On your way, you certainly should not discount the Muron Islands. Beautiful wildlife encounters and coral in quite shallow water. Certainly Onslow, and I think if you were going to arrange like a crew or a fleet meet up and dinner in a pub or something like that, I would be more inclined to do that in Onslow than at Thevenard, because the difficulty getting ashore at Thevenard. All of those spots up there, Port World, Large Island or North Island, pick one and go and have a squiz. I think I would probably, based on what the cruising guide said, I would probably be more inclined to go to Large Island than North, particularly if you've got winds with any southerly in them. Yes, so on the west, the east side, on the Pilbara coast, anything out of that's great shelter from anything out of the south through to the northeast. And then, of course, the islands of the Gulf, of the eastern Gulf, Wye and Tent, over there, if you've got anything from the northeast through to just south of east. So, that gives you a bit of an idea, I think, as to where you might go. Thevenard Island, quiet day, or be prepared to walk a couple of miles around from the north side if the tidal range works fairly well. If you're there, for example, on the Thursday, your high tide's pretty high at 10 in the morning, 11 o'clock on the Friday is pretty high. So, that should give you time to walk a couple of miles, have a few beers and walk back again before the tide goes out. So, that's pretty much it. There's great fishing, although that's not a great fish, that is a shark mackerel. If you catch a shark mackerel, process it fast, get the skin off it, otherwise they taste of terrible ammonia, but they're great if you process them fast and get the skin off them. But we always seem to catch fish all the time. We also had a little visit from a juvenile tern, which is what Sarah's holding there, who didn't want to go and was quite happy for us to handle him, and it was a lot of fun. Coral trout, caught a couple of them, lovely. Some fabulous sunsets, and time with some great crew love happening there between on Endorphin with Mikey and Zoe. Yeah. So enjoy, and just remember there is absolutely nothing more worthwhile than simply messing about in boats, as any of you who have read Wind in the Willows would know. So, happy to take any questions.
So, Paul, how did you find the holding?
No problem at all. Yeah,
so mostly
in sand. At that stage we had a fairly large CQR. I don't think it didn't hold at any stage, do you remember? I think we might have had a little drama on rocky shelves in Montebello, but not around there. It's sandy. I mean, sometimes you might have had to find a sand hole, I think, but no, it's good hole. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that.
How much chain did you have on your case?
We have 55 metres. We typically put out 5-to-1 scope. Yep.
Any challenging currents anywhere?
The currents are all over the place, to be quite honest, and you would be sailing along wondering why we weren't making progress when we seemed to be thrashing through the water. The tide you expect to flood south does so into Exmouth Gulf, but it sort of pushes a counter current up both coasts. So it meant that you freed the sheets and went a couple of, sometimes only a few hundred yards, but usually more like half a mile further out to sea. And you had current with you, or at least not current against you so much. Narrow gaps, yes, there's, you've got to watch out for current. But I didn't expect, I expected there to be bigger issues with current, but, tidal flows, but it wasn't anything that, was all that unmanageable. And I'm not all that, experienced with tides. Most of my sailing has been done on the south coast where there's similar tidal range as what there are here. So, charts at times. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks very much. Somewhere here.
I think you wanted a chart. You wanted that.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was a very detailed presentation, I think. So as was said, Paul's kind enough to give us his PowerPoint presentation, and together with Bill's presentation, we'll have the video also of this presentation evening up on the club website. So thanks very much, Paul.
Yes, there's the slide you want, but
So my job is just to wrap up, if I could. Firstly, I'd just like to pass on apologies from our Commodore Phil Hurst, who's of course is coming with Robbie on this Exmouth event. But he sends his apologies for not being able to be here tonight. Also, I'd like to thank Chris White, our sailing manager up there, and Scott. Nunn is also there, I see, working the late hours for all their help with this event. And of course, for many of you, Chris White is a first port of call with your inquiries regarding this event, together with people like Bill Henson, myself, Ian Whitehead over there, and people from the committee, pleased to help you also. I'd also like to pass on accolade for having the honour of having Kim Clark here as editor of the WA Cruising Guide. Fantastic, and of course have a look at the information that's on the table at the front. There is a copy of the cruising guide there, which you can purchase from reception at a very cheap price, or you can have it for absolutely nothing, which goes towards Kim's retirement fund, as was mentioned earlier. You can get it for free off the website. I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to add, Kim, with regard to the guide, anything to do with that side of things?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Just a couple of things. I know that it was given a good plug for me especially, which is not entirely deserving, because it's my partner in crime, Rob Hills, who does a lot of the work on the guide, the chartlets and the IT and so on. So it's not just a single person. But for those of you who haven't seen the guide, it's not just about the anchorages. There's a whole lot more information there about weather, communications, all stuff. I mean, it's even got things like your optimum driving angles, table of that, and whether you can work out whether you can have wave breaking at the entrance in some of the harbours on the way up and down. So it's got a lot more stuff than just anchorages. The next issue is going to come out in February, so be ready for the Exmouth event. We've put in 100 updates from the last one, some of which including this area, so do get the latest update. If any of you have got any information that will be of help to the guide, then please let me know. If it's already being, Bill, is it being collected for the Exmouth event anyway? Or?
Look, we try to gather as much as we can. As I think you may have seen the satellite depth measurements. So we've sort of to try to cover up the gaps in the chart. We're just looking at that information. It won't be, it's not navigational quality, but it's better than the Google Earth image. So we'll see if we can publish some more information before the event.
So if anybody has got information about this area, obviously let the Exmouth committee know, and if Bill can feed that through to me, that'd be good, or just contact me direct. The email address is in the guide. Just two practical things, which I noticed the tidal ranges that were put up there. I'm guessing those were for Exmouth?
Onslow.
Onslow, okay. I think some of the ranges are actually greater We see for some of the islands in the guide, it's got the range there of up to 3.5 metres. So look at your tidal tables with a little bit of a sceptical eye there. And for those of you who aren't used to sailing in the north and the tropics, be aware that when you see the isobars on the chart, the wind speed for a given spacing of isobars up north is much, much greater than it is down here. So don't be fooled into thinking you've got a nice slack weather system. It doesn't work that way up there. So, yep, new edition out in February. If you've got any information, please let me know. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Kim. Also, as was mentioned, Bill and I spoke with Betty and Barry. Barry, actually, we sat down for coffee because I know you guys had cruised around that, particularly around that Gulf and around that area. Was there anything you wanted to add there, Barry, from what you were telling us, particularly in the Gulf there?
Well, yeah, just on Kent Island, there's a little inlet on the other side, a mangrove inlet, but it actually comes right across to within a couple of 100 metres of the western side of Kent Island. So once you walk over the sand dunes, you're straight into a mangrove inlet, which is, you know, nice fishing off a sandy beach. But, yeah, other than that, nice cruising.
And you went somewhere further deeper into the Gulf, didn't you, Barry? In the south?
We can go to Barry. We were meant to go down to Simpson Island and Bay of Reeds, but we got to Kent Island. Decided we liked it. We stayed there. So have you got any tips about losing propeller as you're coming into the marina? Yeah. Just make sure you need a jetty. I drove we lost our pop in the middle of the marina, coming in and
25 knots.
25 knots, and heading towards the groin, so.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much, because that's, I mean, different people go different places, of course, and we still haven't got a full copybook, so anything anybody knows, please feed it in and we'll try and, it'll be useful. We've got a little bit of time, but not a lot of time before May next year. I'd just like to mention, probably a number of you have seen, just with regard to more on what Bill was talking about with safety and things earlier on. Ian and Cam Berg, in fact, have done a beautiful article in the Blue Water Bulletin, just come out on DSC. It's a 3-page, very detailed article, which I think is fantastic, and if you haven't read it yet, worth reading and a great resource. And Ian, I think in there you offer to help people who haven't maybe yet tested and connected. Do you want to say a little bit more about the background there?
Yeah, look, I think DSC is one of those things where, for those of us who do racing offshore and everything, all our receivers, we carry around DSC, and we haven't used it actually, and I don't think a lot of people had, but Cam particularly had, for the offshore racing, managed a bit of a campaign to get us to be able to use DSC because it has a couple of benefits. One is it does have like a phone system, so it will give you an alarm on a boat, even if you've got the volume turned down, so it's useful to know. The other thing is it does have an emergency function on it, where if you've got that red button, you hold it for 5 seconds, it will send out an alert, which could be picked up by boats nearby. And of course, if you haven't done a bit of learning about what that actually means and how to respond, then it's, you know, it may take extra time to actually respond to that. So it's always useful to know how to use it. It's not the be all and end all, but it is useful to know how that function works for your boat. It takes a little bit of practice just to learn your particular receiver. And the other thing we noted was there was a bit of difference between the different models of transceivers. Some of them might require you to turn on a couple of functions so you can actually monitor DSC. So, and we think it's going to be increasingly used, you know, to contact between boats particularly. So yeah, read the article. There is also a function which, if for those of you who have an an MOB beacon. Some of them can be programmed to use DSC as well as AIS, and then your VHF receiver, set up correctly, will receive that. So in terms of you know, the old saying that the bait will fall off's probably the best place to rescue you. You're carrying one of those AIS transceivers, AIS beacons, then it's useful to make sure it actually works for the yacht that you're sailing on. So anyway, it's basically Cam's article. We put a lot of effort into it, and if people want to sort of test their receivers and see how they work, etc., either Cam or myself, or perhaps even Chris, and he can organise. We can do a bit of a test for them. Okay.
Thanks very much. And okay.
Could I mention something? I'd like
Please.
The Wi-Fi in Exmouth is absolutely appalling, and particularly when we were up there, because there's so many tourists up there, it just can't cope. So the Wi-Fi was just hopeless. But we've just got a Starlink receiver on our boat, which we're trialling down in Freo at the moment, and can't get over the speeds. So I'm starting to wonder whether that might be a solution when you're going up to these places where you're sort of still close to shore, because relying on Wi-Fi is just, it doesn't work. Starlink's got a lot of.
Okay, I'd just like to add something. I was in Exmouth earlier on in the year. If you actually really need to use your laptop and what have you, you need to do it between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning. And after that, it's anybody's guess. Other than that, you've got to sit underneath the police station.
Yes, Betty.
My question goes to Ian. Ian, you were talking about the AIS MOBs, the SARTs that we wear. You can program those to do DSC?
Some of them, yeah. I think it depends on, again, it depends on the model. Unfortunately, there's some universality, but not all. The ocean signal ones have an AIS beacon, but they also have a DSC function as well, and you can program those.
My question would probably comment on it would be, that means when you go over and it sends out to DSC, that means the DSC alarm on your radio is going to go off, so you're going to be alerted that somebody has gone overboard.
Correct, yeah, that's right.
As
Yeah.
well as your AIS.
And
As well as your AIS, but if it's
Yeah.
night time and someone's gone over and you don't know,
So two different alarms go off.
yeah.
yes.
And it sends their GPS coordinates to the radio as well.
Yeah, so,
That's,
yeah.
yeah,
So-
that was what I was getting to, was the alarm. Yeah, thank you.
So it's
I
a
think-
particular brand that does this?
Ocean Signal.
The Ocean Signal ones I know because we've got them. There may be others, but some of them don't. They just have the AIS function, which is pretty good in itself. We know that works. There's been numerous sort of false signals gone off, so it does work. In fact, there was one in the race the other day where accidentally went off, so it's good to know. A ship picked it up, so it's good to know that works. I guess the key message is, read the instructions, have a look at the equipment you've got, and just, some have got a test function on them, so test it, see what happens, see if you can recognise things, and if you need some assistance, we can help take you through it with the experience.
Okay. Are there any other? Oh yes, Anita.
Steve, I know we've got sat phones as primary comms. Is there anything sort of either being organised as a group hire or an agreement with anyone as a supplier for the event or for the pub with this, or is it outright just going sort of?
Look, Anita, we have tried, but unfortunately, well, the good news is the market's very competitive. The bad news is when you think, we tried to do a bulk buy of personal AIS, and even if you order 10 or 20, you'll won't even get 5% off from it. So I'm afraid, there's no real economies of scale for doing large orders. So best to just look around and see what's available.
Okay, is there any any
satellite
further-
phones, you can hire them, sorry, I should just say, you can hire a satellite phone and, you know, you can hire it for a month, it probably costs a couple of $100. They're not very expensive items to hire.
I just remember that Bali a couple of years back, we were still doing this as a group.
We tried, but we couldn't get a worthwhile discount.
Okay, any further questions or comments at this stage? Because I'll just let you know, if it's in our program anyway on the website, but our next event planned for the Exmouth event, like an evening like this, is Thursday the 23rd of February, which is an Exmouth meet the entrance with drinks, it says. So we should be able to get to know each other even better there. But that's not till February. So if there's any other comments, questions, now's the time, and including the sailing office who are kind enough to be with us. Is there, yes?
Has there been any issues with any other participants in extending their insurance north of 26 degrees south? Because I'm in conversation with my insurer, they seem somewhat reluctant. So just asking.
Is it seasonal? Are they giving you the cyclone season? That's like giving you grief? They want it year round?
I've explained to them that we, and I've explained the process that we're going through at the club in terms of scrutineering. Asking lots of questions.
Is Club Marine a sponsor this time or not?
I believe they are sponsor, yeah.
That's a point. Yeah, well, that's real good. So.
We didn't cover any golf campaigns.
So what was that, Billy?
Sorry? We didn't choose the Club Marine.
Yeah. Look, I've used Pantanius. They charge more, they give you less, but they will actually insure your boat. So whereas I couldn't get the
pay out when you actually have a problem.
oh, well, that's a separate matter. They give you a sense of comfort. But sorry, no, I don't think there's any
No easy way.
Shouldn't be.
no easy way, I'm
No
afraid.
easy way. Yeah.
Any other further comments, questions?
Just a couple of points about the Exmouth Marina. I wouldn't recommend doing what we did last year, which was to leave the boat there for months and months. It cost a fortune. And they put us in a bigger pen when there were smaller pens available and charged us at the higher rate, which was incredibly expensive, and there seemed to be no way out of that. So be very clear when you're booking as to what your boat is and how big a pen and you want it in there and what you're paying for and all of that, because they were very straight down the line and it cost us a lot of money. I think it cost nearly $6,000 for the 3 months. Comparatively, we were in Esperance the following summer for 4 months and it cost $1,700. Still with the Department of Transport. How'd that work? So that's one thing. The other thing is that there are some handout notes from my presentation. There are two sorts. There's pretty much the full presentation, or there are ones just with the web links, things like that, but feel free to grab them. They're just there in front of the computer.
Thanks, Paul.
Just the one other warning is don't get your boat lifted up.
In Exmouth, also expensive.
$3,000, $3,500.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully we won't need
I'd
that.
say it's about $200 a day.
Any final questions, comments? If not, I'll just finish on this slide here, which is a bit of fun. Tracy Mills from our Exmouth committee and also lives and works in Exmouth at least half the time and working with Kalis and others up there. She's been able to organise swimming the whale sharks at a slightly cheaper rate there, $50 off the normal price charged up there with two companies. I think one of them actually sponsored us last year. And for diving with the whale sharks on Friday, the 12th of May. Thoroughly recommend it. We really enjoyed it last time. There's 20 people per boat, so it is a nice thing to do with your group of your friends or your crew if you fancy doing that. You're advised, you book direct, not through the club, you book direct with these two suppliers at the top here. Both made this offer, but you should book as soon as you can, because if these things book out, as you would know, and if they don't get booked out, probably over the next couple of weeks, they will just book to others. So, like I say, this will be on the website, so if you fancy taking that up, please take that up and enjoy it. Have a look at the stuff on the top front table here, and I hope you can join us for a drink down below. I think the bar's probably not open here, is it? It looks quiet, so I think we can join for a drink downstairs. Thanks everybody for coming this evening. Thank you.
It was expensive.
Well, actually, my oldest daughter's got twins, so we had her middle daughter, the older daughter was off, she went on an excursion, and she came about 2:30 to pick them up, and so I was out there, the boy and girl, the little girl came out the back door and said, "Well, Mum's here!" And then 2 seconds later, comes around the corner and says, "I don't want to go there, I don't want to go home yet." It was really, he was really close. He had to go home. So, yeah, it was good. So, yeah, I was doing that. Just sort of finished painting my middle daughter's house. Just taking that inside, outside. I've got a couple of finishing off jobs to do. We're building as well, so we're just starting out getting the earthworks done. So 12 months or so. Weekend just gone, yeah, we went down to Rockingham and back. You're on Moneypenny? Oh, Mine's Eye, sorry, not Moneypenny, Mine's Eye. Yeah, we went down. It was good fun. The trip down, the seats were really short. On Sunday, Sunday, I was buggered Sunday. Like Sunday, the sail back on Sunday wasn't that hard. We had, kite up for the first 6 or 7 miles and then a bit of a beat and then downwind, two routes sailing down the channel. But, when I got back, I got home on Sunday night and I was stuffed. So are you taking Mind's Eye? You guys taking Mind's Eye up to Exmouth, or?
No, Michael's not into it.
Is that still going? Stand off.
See how it goes.
Yeah.
I've got a resident crop that I'm hoping to so That'll be the tricky meeting, if the sharp takes the same, then yeah, a friend of mine had that when well, that's what he said. He said you'll be going backwards on things. Don't say that. I don't need to hear So as I say, it should fit.
So exactly. So you want
Okay.
on the east coast for a couple of years, and then we'll be frequent. We have grants.
As long as you
We had a discussion lately. At least it's there.
Steve Delphi, I think he's standing best on. Well, he's on.
Steve, oh, don't worry, I've done all
our situation
So